All right, we're back. We are COMP253 in the fall 2018 semester. 2018 semester had Centennial. I'll be okay. My scene and everything else is going to bits today for some reason or another. Okay, I was working with the class outside of the recording, and we made this little cube with a cutout. I'm going to do it again just to kind of record that stuff. So I'm going to Control N and make a new file. Start off with the default file. And what I want to do is I want to cut out a chunk of the cube on the right. How do I do that? Again, this is hard surface modeling, but it's a little bit different. A couple things is whenever I start off a new file in Blender, when I'm working with something I want to import into Unity, just a reminder, I want to change my world space to meters is what I want to do in terms of measurement. Now, by default, if I didn't close Blender down, it'll remember. All right? So remember the last time it was meters, now it's meters again. Next thing is I want to cut this cube up to give it some more geometry. So you don't have to, but if you don't, then what happens is you're going to get deformations. Let's show you what I'm talking about. I'm going to press Shift-D to duplicate my cube. All right? Here's my cube. And we're going to have another cube up here. And what I'm going to call this one is Cutout. So let's call this one Cutout. There's my Cutout cube. Here's my cube. The way you do Boolean operations is, and by the way, you don't have to use cubes. You can use any kind of other object you want. Spheres, cubes, other objects, anything you want to use to do a Boolean operation. Be careful though. The more complex the object, the weirder stuff happens. Okay? So I want to cut this one out of this one. And what I want to do is I want to go here. Now there's an area on the right in the tabs we didn't cover called modifiers. Modifiers, there's a ton of awesome modifiers you can use. Things like mirror modifiers, which we're going to do right now, and a bunch of other ones. But one of them is this thing called Boolean, the Boolean modifier. So the Boolean modifier, what it does, it allows you to do a Boolean operation. And these are the three Boolean operations it allows you to do. Intersect, which allows you to take two objects and create an intersection between them. A union, right? And a difference. Let's look at what they do. First, you take the main object you want to do the Boolean operation on. Then you choose the object you want to cut out. Example, this cutout. And now look, here's my intersect. How come my other object disappeared? Because there's no intersection. There's no intersection between the two. It only leaves the other object. If I want to do difference, right? And I have this other object here. And now I want to take this object, and wherever it intersects, I want to subtract this object from this object, the original one, okay? So here's my object. I want to do a difference with the cutout. And by the way, there's different ways of doing it. For now, let's look at this. There's also an overlap threshold that you can increase as well, okay? If I click Apply and I move my original object away, you can see now that I have this weird cutout. And you're like, wow, that's really cool, right? And it is. It can actually you can create objects really quickly by using a Boolean modifier. However, one thing I noted in class when I wasn't recording is if I was to go into edit mode now, I see these weird deformations. And let me talk about them. Okay, this isn't so bad. But take a look here. So I have additional geometry. I've got a few more faces, but I got this weird face. This weird face here, guys, there's no rhyme or reason to it if you think about this, right? I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different vertices on one face. Guys, that does not compute in real life. It doesn't compute. You can't have 6 vertices when you bring this into a game. Remember, games like quads and triangles, right? This is not a quad or a triangle. You need to make it into a quad or a triangle, right? So one thing we could do is we could make a cut that goes across here, right? That's one thing to do. So we could use the K key to make a cut from this vertex to this vertex, and that would create 2 faces here on the top, this one, and not disrupt the flow of what we're doing, okay? Same thing goes with this face. It's actually killed 3 faces. This face, and the top face all had a problem, right? So I can do the same thing here. I can make a cut from here to here, or from here to here, or from here to here, as long as you have only 4 4 verts, if you will, per face. So I can do the same thing here. I can go to this one, and I can think of a cut. So I'm using the K key again. I'm just going to bring it so you can see it. I'm going to make a cut that goes from this vertex to this vertex. Again, it snaps too, so be careful. All right? If I continue, I can continue making cuts, or I can just hover over that until it becomes red and press Enter, and that'll do the cut. So there's a cut, so there's this and this. You can notice that there's a quad here, and a quad here, and a quad here, and a quad here. So far, so good. Well, we got one more to fix over here. So here, we're going to go here and cut this across this way. Again, game engines don't like weird quads that have, they're not quads, they have weird faces like that. It wouldn't know what to do with them. All right, cool. So we've got these things, but they're not very exciting, right? And you've got some differently shaped faces now. This will change the way you deform this object in the future. So be careful. What if I have this now and I want to perform another Boolean operation? Uh-oh. This is where it becomes pretty hairy. So I bring this cube back over and I want to do another cut with my cube. I want to cut this part now. But I already have some weird cuts already, right? I'm just showing you this because it'll compound the problems we're going to have. So this is the cut that I want to do. Here's my original object. I add another Boolean modifier in here. Every time I add a Boolean modifier, I have to specify what's the cutout. And I want to specify the type of operation. Union adds, difference subtracts. Intersect only takes the two pieces that are connected. The two parts, if there's only the middle of the places that are connected. Okay, cool. If I press apply and I move this object out, it looks nice inside of my scene. However, when I go here and click A to enter, you know what? It kept this cut, and it kept this cut, and these cuts, no problem. What about this? Now I'm really in trouble, right? What do I do with this stuff? Do you guys have some ideas? How do I fix this one? I got a face here, which is really weird, and I got a face here that's really weird. This one's easy to fix. This one's just the same. So I'm just going to press a K to cut this one out. Right? I can do that, no problem. But what about this weird face and this weird face? Those are two weird faces, right? What do I do? What do you think? Guys, I need your help, because this is what you're going to face this in the future, and you're going to go, Tom, I'm in trouble. It doesn't look right. I don't know why, but when I draw my stuff, it looks terrible. What do I do?
We can join.
I could do this. I could do a cut here, right? Which makes it so that there's four faces, four edges here, or 4 verts. And here, I'm going to have a problem if I did that. Because look, I'm going to have 1, 2, 3, 4, and then I'm going to have a cut. There's a vertex that's hanging. This is called a hanging vertex.
Can you remove the cut that
I can remove the. So you want me to remove this? I could do that too. So I could do that. So that's very good. Let's do that. So in order for me to do that, I'm going to go to edge select mode, select this edge. And right now what I want to do is I want to remove the edge. Now, if I delete it and press edges, I actually have a hole. That's not what I want to do. Don't do that. Undo. You want to dissolve it. So X and press dissolve edges. And that removes the cut. Okay? Now, I'm still in trouble because this is weird, right? But I can make a nice cut that goes this way, which makes it more reasonable again, right? So I'm going to go here, press the K key, make a cut from here to here, and then press enter. And that's going to create a nice cut with the beautiful geometry that we were missing. Same thing goes here. I've got these really weird cuts. Here, I mean, it's nice for me to do that, but I don't have this geometry on the bottom to support the cut that's straight, right? I'd have to increase my geometry on the bottom to do that. For now, let's leave these edges the same. This edge, though, we need to do something here, right? Here, we're okay, right? We have the geometry here to kind of go down. But what about here? What do I do there? The only way I can do it is this way, right? I can't do this one anymore because it gives me this weird plane right here, right? So let's kill it. So I'm going to get this one, press X, dissolve edges, and then make a cut that goes from here to here. So again, it's not like terribly difficult to figure this out, but you've got to be a little bit strategic in your cuts. Good. So now we got some faces there. I can't fix this one because I don't have enough geometry there, and I can't fix this one. But now we have an object that has enough geometry for me to do stuff with. But the lowest level of cuts that we can possibly find. Right? Okay, let's do another Boolean operation, a crazy one. I'm going to do a Boolean like right in the middle, right? And see what happens, like a really bad one, okay? So press back out, go here. Let's change my cutout. So I'm gonna scale across the y-axis a little bit, make it a weird shape. I'm also gonna scale across the x-axis, make that a little shape, so make almost like a pillar. And now I want to take this pillar and let's zoom back. I can zoom in by pressing the decimal key on my numeric keypad, right? I want to get this thing over here, and right in the middle of that area there where I have a cut. I know there's a cut that goes here like this. I'm going to come in. I'm going to cut this shape out. Deep, by the way. I want to make it like really deep, right? See what happens. So I'm going to take this one, and again, I'm going to add a modifier, a Boolean modifier, and I want to use the cutout as my modifier, and I want to go into difference, right? And then press apply. And then when I do that, I'm going to pull that shape out, either one or the other. So undo that. This one out. And now I have this. And it looks really good, but it's actually not. I'm telling you this because you're going to encounter this kind of behavior sometimes, right? All right, let's go into edit mode and see what I got. Okay, whoa, what the heck is this? Look at this. Look at this edge. I got this edge that's hanging here, and I got this other edge that's hanging there. And I got this weird plane up here, this weird plane here. I'll show you what I'm talking about. Look at this weird plane. What the heck is that? Right? Now what do I do? How do I fix this problem? I could do the same thing. I could take a cut that goes from here to here and a cut that goes from here to here. I could do that. That would fix my problem without adding additional geometry. So I'm going to do that first thing. So again, I'm going to go use the K key. Actually, let's just delete deep select. Use the K key to get a cut that goes from here to there, right? And a cut that goes from here. Don't go too crazy now. To there. Now look at it, kind of jumps around. You got to be very careful how it does the cut. All right, so that makes sense. Now I've got a quad here and a weird quad there and a weird quad there, but guess what? They work. It knows how to draw them, right? It's going to be weird other places, but here we're okay. This it did a good job of. It just made a square all the way down, right? So I did here. But here is where we have our issues, up here. What the heck do I do up here? Well, same thing. I can make a cut there and a cut there, and we're good, right? And again, you may not think this is too difficult, but guys, I showed the class a cut that was really bad before, where you have to figure out what it's trying to do. Now we're good again. Life is good again when we have this situation, right? Or is it? Okay. So why am I showing you this? Because you need to make it happen. But there's a real big problem with this one, this shape, guys. And I want to point it out to you. This is good. These two faces, this face and this face, meet criteria of a quad. But however, it's really sharp here and it's really sharp here, which means when you draw something on there, it's going to be skewed. So I'm going to talk about that in a second. So try whatever you can to make, when you have a Boolean operations are really interesting because you can form out your shape quickly. Boom, 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 boom. You can follow your shape. Take a cutout, make a cutout the way you want, and then you can form out your shape. Where it becomes hairy, and I'll say like hairy, like the hair of a dog kind of hairy, right? Is where we kind of have a different cutout. Let's not use this cutout. Let's make a second cutout, but let's make it a sphere. Right? I'm just pointing it out to you. I want you to think about the calculations that are going to be done. Let's make it a UV sphere. Okay, here it is. Okay, so here's my cutout. And I want to make a really rounded cutout that's going to come at the back of this shape, like right in here. Okay, let's see what happens now. Again, this is where it saves time to do this because doing it another way, like actually making a spherical shape by yourself, by using faces and trying to figure out how that's going to look, I don't know. That's like a lot of work, right? So also, what if I want to make the sphere all the way down? Maybe I want to make this so that it is scaled. So I'm going to take my cutout. Let's call it cutout so we know what it is. Here's cutout. And let us scale this thing. So I'm going to say scale across the z-axis a bunch of ways. So we want to make it so that it's spherical or kind of like cylindrical, if you will, almost in some ways. And we want to kind of push it in here, but I also want to rotate across the y-axis a little bit here, just to give it a little bit more. Rotate across the y-axis a little bit more. Sure. And let's just pull it out again a little bit and flatten it out. Flatten this part out. So I'm going to say scale across the x-axis a little bit in. There we go. And then push this in. So there's my cutout. I want this cutout. Okay. This is a non-symmetrical, weird cutout that's going to happen on the face of this surface. Let's see what the heck this does. And I have also a lot of geometry on the sphere. We'll talk about this. You can make the sphere as least geometry as you want, by the way, right? Like less geometry. All right. So again, I'm going to right click on this. I'm going to add a Boolean modifier, and I'm going to use my cutout. And instead of intersecting, right, I want to make the difference, right? And I'm going to click apply. And this time, what I'm just going to pull this out, and you see this beautiful geometry. Yay. That's nice. That's beautiful, right? Okay, what kind of crazy stuff have I created? And how the heck do I fix this? All right. Well, this is a problem. This is a real problem. I have all these additional vertices here, and they're hanging into this really weird, like crazy, you know, face. Here's my face. And look at this face. This face will never be rendered properly, ever. And same thing with this face. These two faces have big problems. Okay. Quick and dirty solutions to this problem. I take these edges and I kind of put them, telescope them in with triangles into one of the vertices like this, boop, 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 right? So then I have a bunch of these things that connect to the vertices. I could do that, right? I could split this thing up in more detail. I could do that too, right? I could add, I could subdivide this one. I could subdivide this whole thing so it has more geometry if I want. But this, my friends, this problem is not going to go away. It's not going to make it easy for you to do this. There's nothing that's going to make this render properly unless you add or fix this problem. I'm not going to take the time to fix it, but you can see what I would do. I would have to create some kind of triangles, and triangles are bad, but I mean, they're better than nothing because there's no geometry on this face at all. I could add additional geometry to the entire cube before I did this as well. Let's try that approach. I'm going to kind of undo. Right? I'm going to keep on doing. Oop, that's bad. So let's redo. Can I redo? I don't think there's a redo function. Or so I think it's Control-Shift-Z. Yeah, that's what it is. Redo. Control-Shift-Z. Yeah, I need that. I wanted to go and do the undo happens in wherever you did it. In object mode, you can undo object mode. In edit mode, you can undo edit mode. So be careful. So I'm going to undo the object. So this is it. And I want to put that modifier back. There's my modifier with the cutout, right? And if I move this object, now it hasn't been cut out yet, okay? So before I cut out, I want to go into edit mode. And what I want to do is I want to create subdivisions. So I'm going to go into my subdivisions. If I know that this is going to come into play here, I want to create more subdivisions in this area. So let's just go back out into object mode for a second, move this out. I know it's going to come into place in here. And to help myself, I'm going to create subdivisions just on this face. You can do that. And also, to also help myself, I have a lot of details on this object. I could reduce the detail on the object too. That would help a lot. So first of all, I only want the minimal amount of curvature for this object, right? So let's make a new cutout. That's the first thing I would do. Be careful what you're doing is what I'm saying. So Shift-A, let's make a new cutout, which is going to be a sphere. We're going to make a UV sphere, but on the left, take a look, guys. I don't have to accept the default requirements. My segments, I have 32 segments, and I have 16 rings on my cube, right? Now, I can't do this. Once I move my cube, I can't see anything anymore. So I got to be very careful about how I do this, right? I want to reduce my segments down to like something like 10. There's my segments. It still has the geometry I want, but it doesn't look as nice. I can also, if I click away, click to this one, and I just hide this one, and I click back, I've lost that control. Look, I've lost the control. So I can undo, right? I can bring it back, and I can undo the segments. I can undo bringing that in. Let's just do it again. Let's just hide this thing for a second. And then I'll add my sphere back in. Here's my sphere, here's my UV sphere. By default, it has 10 segments. Maybe this isn't right. I have 16 rings. Rings go around this way. Segments go around this way. Okay? So if you think about it, maybe I want more than 10. Maybe I want, I don't know, 12. That's a little better from a curvature perspective. That's pretty good. But I don't need as many rings. Let's bring this down to 12 too. Now I've really made a lower poly version of my sphere. This is important because that means less deformations when I add my cutout. Let's call this the cutout. And let's bring back my my cube so I can see it. Okay, there's my cube. I want to take my cutout now and move it over here, right? And now I can deform it the way I wanted to before. So I'm going to kind of scale across the Z axis a bunch. Okay, that's pretty cool. And let's bring this a little bit out. That's where I want to make my cutout happen. Okay, you can see that there's less geometry that I'm doing there. Now I want to help it, so I'm going to hide this thing for a second and go into here and add more geometry just on this face. Okay, I could cut the entire thing up, but bear with me. Okay, so again, what I want to do is I'm going to tab into this mode, into edit mode, and I want to start. I can subdivide only one face at a time. So I can subdivide, and let's subdivide a couple of times. I think that's almost right. Let's do one more. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I have a bunch more faces. Let's just add one more cut. There we go. That's probably good enough. But notice the cuts don't happen. This is a problem on this side right now and a problem on this side. We can take away some of these later on, but I've added enough geometry to accept what's going to happen with my sphere. So go back out, go to my sphere, my cutout, and now what I want to do is I want to do that Boolean operation with the cutout. So Boolean on the cutout, and I want to apply. And now when I take this cutout away, I have additional geometry. That's interesting what it did. I didn't want that to happen. Let's undo that. And undo that, change. There we go. I want to do my cutout, but I don't want to do it yet. I want to kind of pull this thing out just a touch. I think it's too much. Maybe I can flatten this up a little bit. So scale across the x-axis. Make it a little bit flatter. I don't want it to go through this part here, and that's not what I wanted. So now when I go to here, go to the cutout, press apply, take this cutout away, I have this geometry. Okay, cool. But what does this look like now after I've done some separation? So if I press tab, now I have a little bit more geometry to play with, and it's not as bad, is what I'm saying, because I have some kind of stuff that I can connect with my geometry. Like for example, here, look, I've got this edge here, and I want to connect this edge with this edge, or this vertex with this vertex. This is interesting what you could do here. There's a lot of options. So I want to take this, and I only want to look at it from a vertex perspective. And I want to kind of move both vertices at the same time. So I'm going to take these vertices here. And what I can do is, if I was to press G for go, I can move these vertices at the same time, right? I can also pull them down, right? Now, if I did this, it would kind of deform my object even more. So that's not something I want. So undo that. Perhaps what I want to do is, if I want to make it symmetrical like this, here's a symmetrical way of looking at it. Maybe what I want to do is I want to cut this thing in half if I was going to make it so symmetrical, and then do a mirror modifier. We're going to talk about that in a sec. But for now, let's just deal with it. It's a problem, but let's just deal with it. I want to connect these two things together. So a couple of things I can do. I can move this up here or this up here. What do you want? Well, the way to work is on the left, right? I want to merge these two verts. That's what I want to do, okay? So I want to merge these verts, right? And the way to do that is I can merge at different places. It says merge at last, merge at first, merge at center, merge at cursor, okay? So I want to click here, and I want to merge at last. So here, and then click merge at last, right? And now I do the same thing here, and then merge at last. And now I have this cut. Okay, I also have this cut, which is kind of weird, right? I have this cut right here, which we're going to fix later on. But I can do the same thing with some of these, right? I have some other weird effects here, and I want to point them out to you. When it cut through, I also have this vert right here. Take a look. I have like a weird set of vertices that are right here. Like this vert here is not doing anything. And I got this vert and this vert and this vert, and they're very close together. And I can't even zoom in with the way my viewport's working right now. So this vert, and this vert. Okay, cool. So I want to take this one and I want to merge here. So this and this, merge at last. Cool. It changes the geometry a little bit, right? If I didn't like that that change, I could definitely do this one. So this one, and then merge at last. That changed that one. This one is, maybe I want to dissolve this edge, this vert. So I can say press X and dissolve vert. Right? So it doesn't do anything to the geometry, just changes my stuff so it doesn't dissolve. How about this one? This is a weird situation. I have this vert right here, and I have all this. Maybe what I want to just dissolve this whole edge, right? I don't need that edge right now because I have a problem anyway that I'm going to create. I'm going to have to create some kind of geometry here, right? Take a look. So some kind of thing that I got to do here where I have to create a cut, but this is not helping me. Right? I could do a kind of slide this up and connect it, but I think this particular edge I should get rid of. So I can go here and X and dissolve my edges. And I've got this extra edge loop right here, like this one right here. You can't see it. It's kind of hard. But there's an extra edge in here, right? And it really depends on what you want to do, right? Like if you want this thing to loop right in, to cut right in, what you want to do is maybe connect these two verts. So again, Control Tab into vertex. I'm not going to go do this whole thing. But I want you to think about this because this is kind of the problem that we're having. If you want to keep this geometry here, then you got to do something. You got to do something with this shape because this shape right now is a triangle. Look, just to bring it so you can see it. Look, this shape, it's a triangle. Triangles typically bad, right? So moral of the story, Booleans are great. I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but if you think about it, you have to go across all the area and fix it. And that's a lot of work for you to do. Sure. So what did it save us? It saved us doing all this, right? It saved us doing that part. But maybe there's a better way. Let's talk about a better way. So I'm going to make a new. Go here. And what I want to do here is I want to use this shape, but I want to start modeling an object that's symmetrical. Whenever I do a modeling an object that's symmetrical, like a spaceship or like something else, I want to do something with mirror modifier. All right. So the way to do that is, again, I want to go into one side. So here's the front. Typically, I start with the front, right? And I typically go into front orthographic mode like this. And I want to create some cuts in here. So I want to subdivide this. So I'm going to click at least subdivide the surface. So it's the minimum geometry that I need, this part. Okay? And then what I do is once I go into front mode, I want to deselect all and go into wireframe. And I want to delete this part. So I'm going to use B-select mode just to select these two verts and press X to delete the vertices. Now I've got half a shape, which is kind of cool, right? But what I want to do is I want to make a mirror modifier that extends this other part. I don't want to apply the modifier, though. I want to work with one side of the shape. And when I'm done, I want to apply the mirror after. And this is great for symmetrical modeling, all right? So how do I apply the modifier? Press back into object mode, right? Go into the modifiers, go to add modifier, go to mirror modifier, and boom, it looks like it's one shape. However, take a look at the right. The modifier does this. It says, I want to mirror across the x-axis, right? This way. It's not across the x-axis this way. It's through the x-axis. I want to mirror through the x-axis. Okay? And I also want to, in the middle, I want to click on clipping. That means anything in the middle automatically clips together, right? If I don't put that on, you're going to see an effect. Let's go into edit mode now. In edit mode, I don't have access to this part of the geometry. I only have access to this side of the geometry. So if I take this vertex and do one of these, I have a hole. However, if I use clipping and do this, it's not going to do anything. It won't allow me to do a hole here. It clips or connects. It's almost like it glues the center vertices together. That's what it does. Okay? So clipping, again, allows this stuff to happen, like a little mouth that can go on. But if I don't use clipping or this one. Okay, now this is neat. Okay, cool. So I've got this area here that I want to modify. And if I do a subdivision again, so if I subdivide my surface, let's say, for example, undo. If I press select all, right, this part here, and I want to subdivide this surface, I could do the subdivision surface modifier. So I can do subdivide, but then it subdivides everything, right? What if I don't want that? I just want just this part subdivided. I can use Control R, right, which is this idea of adding an extra loop, right? I can move it around if I want to. I can add this loop, move it around, or I can press escape and just accept it where it is. Notice that I can also choose number of cuts. So now I'm subdividing, but I'm only subdividing on this axis, on this loop. I can actually add a number of cuts to subdivide, as many as I want, which is really cool from a control perspective. On this side, not a lot of geometry. On this side, lots of control, lots of extra detail. Why is this important? Sometimes we need more details on one part and less details on another. And you don't want to add detail unless you absolutely have to. Guys, be minimalists, because you can always add detail later, right? So let's suppose I want to do this, and I want to add just detail on this side, not on this side. And then if I want to take this set of faces, so let's say go to faces, I want to take this set of faces. So I'm going to say Control, Shift, Alt, right click, right? Oops, undo. I want to get this little loop here, right? So I'm just going to just right click this whole loop. So I want to get this whole loop, right? And what I want to do with it is I want to scale it, right? Or extrude it, or whatever I want. Let's just scale it. So I want to scale it up. Notice it happens on both sides because we have a mirror going on. So I'm going to scale it up first. So scaling it. Then I press extrude and press enter. And then I want to extrude across the z-axis. And now I have control, right? I also want to extrude across the constraint. I want to constrain myself across the z-axis and across the y-axis. And you can see that you get some interesting numbers happening with some weird Z fighting, right? Again, if I don't like any of this stuff, I can always undo. If I've already extruded, you're going to see that there's double faces here, right? I've got some Z fighting. You can see the Z fighting in here already. Look. If you look closely enough, there's actually Z fighting, right? But the really cool thing is once I extrude one side, once I do something with one side, with the mirror, I can do it with the other side. This is a great way to do symmetrical modeling on objects, right? You know, to give it an interesting effect, right? And there might be some doubles in here. So I'm going to again select all, and then I can go to the left where it says remove doubles, and now you can see that I removed 6 vertices that are overlapping, which takes away the Z fighting. Because when I do extrusion, what happens is I extruded and pressed enter immediately, which means I made 4 vertices that were on top of each other. Right? I didn't move the vertices away. Okay? So now I've got enough geometry and I have no problems with my geometry. So I mean, I could do something like this, make something more complex, and especially if it's something that is symmetrical, I want to use symmetrical modeling to do it with a mirror modifier. I can't apply modifiers in edit mode, but I can apply modifiers in object mode. So if I click apply and if I press go back in now, I have this model the way it is. I could further cut this if I want to. Let's say if I go to the right side and I want to do some symmetrical modeling on the other side, I could go into orthographic mode and cut half of it away again. If I want to show you how that works. So again, let's cut this part away. So or maybe this part, doesn't matter. So I'm going to do B select mode and cut half the model away. This part. Press X and get rid of vertices. Oops, undo. Get rid of faces. I got this part of the model gone, right? And I want to mirror this part now, but guess what? The mirror is not across the x-axis anymore, right? What would it be? So I go add mirror. Notice that it's not working this way now. If I go y-axis, now it comes back. So you can see I got a symmetrical mirror across this way, right? I can also mirror both sides. So let's say if you want to do only one corner of something and you want to mirror both directions, you can do that too, right? So this is kind of cool, the way it works. And now I've created my geometry by using some tools. If I click apply mirror and I go in there now, it's all the geometry that I want in perfect geometry. There's none of those weird quads or anything like that. They're all normal, right? If I want to create this kind of aspect. But what about, and this, I wanted to show you this. So Booleans are really cool. They're great for modifying. And I'm going to introduce today a little bit of textures, how to apply textures and that kind of stuff onto a surface. Okay? So I want to just delete this. So I'm going to press X. Actually, I'll just go File, New. And what I want to do here is I want to show you a really quick way of adding some really cool looking stuff. So I want to get rid of my cube and I want to add in a plane. Guys, do this with me. Trust me. All right, I'm going to add in a new plane. The plane has no material on it. I want to scale the plane up so it's the size of my grid. Let's just say the size of my grid. It's about this. So numerically, it's about 16 times on both the X and Y axis. Just scale it up 16 times, okay? Yay, it's a perfect plane. Fantastic. What I want to do is I want to make this look like gravel, okay? I could go in here and add geometry, like make it look curved and all this kind of stuff, right? But a lot of times what we want to do is just add something that makes like a gravel floor, right? So if I go back to my material, I want to add a new material. We're going to call this the ground material. Here's my ground, right? And I'm not going to give it any color. So my diffuse is going to be left alone, but my specular, I'm going to turn right down. So it's going to be nothing. It's just going to be a material to accept something. Okay, cool. Now, here's how we do the next part. And I'm only going to introduce it today, and we're going to continue it next week. But I want you to experiment with it. Here, this next tab on the right is the texture tab. Take a look. So here's my texture tab. What I want to do is I want to add a new texture. Let's add a new texture. And we're going to call this texture gravel, or I don't know, cobblestones. A cobblestone texture. Yay! Now I can make a texture by drawing it, or I can open one up that I have. I don't have a cobblestone texture. Let's download one. This is a great site that I recommend for all textures. It's called texture.com. Textures.com allows you to kind of go in here and kind of log in or sign up for free. So I'm going to log into my textures.com. I have an account. And what I want to do is in my textures.com, I want to look for, there's some really cool textures that come with it, like some floors or ground. I'm going to click on ground. And under ground, as an example, I want to look at gravel. And I want to look at cobble. So kind of a gobble. This one looks really cool. This is a 4K texture though. Let's hold this one. This one looks pretty cool. All right, so yeah, look, I have some cobble texture, and you can see that some of these are seamless. This is interesting. This is like tile texture. I'm going to download this tile texture right here. This is a 1024 by 1024 tile texture. I'm going to download, and I'm going to put this on my desktop. So let's put this on my desktop. We'll call this, we'll just rename it so that it makes sense to us. We'll call it gravel cobble, the JPEG, and it's on my desktop. Now, to save you time, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this gravel cobble texture. I'm going to put it up on Slack for you guys. So here's Slack. And let's go to General, and we're just going to kind of copy this or drag and drop this gravel cobble texture, this one, and just put it up on Slack. So you have the same one as I do. Please grab it now that I'm uploading it. There it is. You got it. So it's on Slack. Okay? It's about a meg. Cool. Now what I want to do is in Blender, right? I have to do one operation here. When I create this object, I want to open up on the image, onto the texture property. Take a look, guys, please. You're going to miss it, and then you're not going to be able to do it. You're going to ask me questions. Here's the cobblestone texture. I put it in here, right? I just called it cobblestone. I probably misspelled it a little bit. Let's make sure it's spelled correctly, just so that I don't totally kill myself here. There we go. I want to open it up, and I want to open up on the desktop this gravel cobble texture. Here it is, gravel cobble. I'm going to press open image. Okay, cool. I've got this gravel texture. It looks like it's in here. And if I go to material, I see nothing. You're like, oh man, where's the texture? It's not, it's here. I've loaded it in, but I don't see it here. Well, the reason for this is because each material is going to try and wrap itself like a skin, right, onto my object. But I have to explain how this is done. And what you have to create is something called a UV map. A UV map is a two-dimensional map, right? I want you to think about this, a two-dimensional drawing. And instead of X and Y, in CG, in computer graphics, we use U and V. U is the X-axis on the map, and V is the Y-axis on the map. So we call it a UV map. It's a very common term in texturing. So the way to do this is if I go to edit mode in my plane, I can press U, and I can unwrap my UV map until I get this. Let me undo that. So I press, I'm in edit mode, and I press U, and I click unwrap. And what it does is it unwraps my UV map, this cobblestone texture, on my plane like this. And if I go back into object mode, it looks like this. Are you with me? Okay, but this looks really flat. Look, man, it looks like it's just a picture, right? What the heck? How do I make this look more realistic? We can use something called a normal map, all right? So if I go to my texture, if I scroll all the way down, on the bottom, there's something called influence, right? And on the influence right now, we have color. This is the color influence. And the color is the color of the texture. If I zone this back, you can see that I have more material color and less texture color that's affecting my pixels, right? However, there's another one that's called geometry. And if I click normal, now look what I get. I get this. It looks like it's really bumpy, right? However, it's too bumpy, right? I want to reduce this bumpiness to like about 0.15. Let's try 0.15. So numerically, I want to go to 0.15 and press enter. Now what you got is something that looks a little bit bumpy, but not too bumpy, right? Maybe even 0.15 is too much. But anyways, that's how it looks right now. It looks like a realistic kind of texture. I can also displace it if I want. Based on, I can create a height map, which is totally something else, but actually displaces this whole thing based on what the texture is looking at. And for that, I need to use a modifier. So modifiers are really cool. They allow you to do stuff like displace stuff. Okay, so here's something cool. So here's my height is displaced, okay? And it's displaced by a certain number. So displacement maps, what it does is it allows me to displace this whole object by a certain amount. Let me just reduce that. So if I reduce it, I can move my whole object around by using something called displace, a displace modifier, right? But wouldn't it be cool? Let's get rid of that. Wouldn't it be cool if I had some kind of additional thing to do where I can, when I can deform or look how it looks, I can deform it based on my my normal map. Now I don't really have a normal map for this thing. I'm actually creating one dynamically. So if you look here, when I look at this, and if I look at, so here's this is my material, and then I have my texture. And if I scroll down, by the way, I have this thing called mapping, UV. My map, I can look at my UV map. I can click on that. My projection is flat. I can choose different kinds of projections here. And my influence is what I'm being influenced by. So again, displacement, I mean, there really isn't anything to influence my displacement because I don't have a displacement map. I could put that in later on. But for now, I'm going to uncheck this one. Same thing with warp. Warp's not going to really do much at this point because I don't have any kind of information for that. I could add in specular color, so I can make it so it's like more shiny and less shiny, that kind of stuff. But that's really what I'm doing here. Now, I have a bunch of different objects here. This is in this little thing. I have tangent, stress, reflection, normal. I can actually load in a normal map in here. I can do a bunch of other stuff. For now, all I've done is I'm using UV coordinates. If I go to normal coordinates, right, I got nothing, right? I don't have a normal map. I can add a normal map in here by loading something completely different now. Right now, all I have is my gravel cobble texture, and so there's nothing I can do, right? And we'll talk about normal mapping later on. For now, let's leave it at UV. You can see what this is. Okay, cool. I want to bring this into Unity. I want to bring this into Unity. This is the final piece, right? So how do I bring this into Unity? How does it look when I bring this plane into Unity? What if I gave this plane thickness? What would happen? Bad things would happen, okay? Because my map, this flat object would try to project on the sides too, okay? We're going to do more texturing and stuff later on. But I want you to think about a texture as just an image that's on the UV plane, X and Y plane. It's on one, it's almost like it unwraps the texture onto my object. Okay, that's what it does. I can use the same texture that I have on other objects. So if I shift A and add a new cube, here's my cube, and I want to add the same texture on the cube, now I'm going to have a real problem. First of all, let's unwrap it first. So I'm going to go into edit mode, and I'm going to press unwrap, and I'm going to click unwrap. So my cube now has UV coordinates for the entire cube. Yay! All right, let's go back into object mode. And I'm going to go back into my material and choose the same material, ground. Immediately, my cube gets mapped. Take a look. Look, it even has some bumpiness around it. It looks like it's bumpy because of this normal quality. It looks like it's the camera's being fooled into thinking there's some kind of geometry when there's not. Normal mapping makes it possible for you to add very simple geometry, cube, with much more complex looking stuff on the top. It looks like there's a lot of detail, but actually there's zero detail on this thing, right? So it looks like we have some kind of cobblestone texture on this cube, but there's nothing. Let's bring this cube into Unity and see what happens. So let's get rid of my plane. I don't care about my plane. My plane was my test. I want to take this cube and I want to export it into Unity. How do I do this? Well, first of all, there's a couple things to note. Whenever I have a cube and I have some kind of geometry this way, if you go into the texture, you can see that there's this little tiny area here that says the source. If I have to click on this little box. It almost looks like a little box here. It's on the texture side, and it's inside the image property. If I click this little box, what it does is it saves the image along with my material. Now, let's save this thing. So I'm going to say File, Save. I'm going to save my cube as, I don't know, cube. I'm going to save it on my desktop, and we're going to call it cube.blend. The blend is the extension for blended. So cube.blend. Okay, so that's where it's going to be. I'm going to save the Blender file. Great. And now I want to export it. I'm going to go File. I'm going to export. I'm going to export it as FBX. FBX is film box. That's the standard that we can use. And I can also export that on the desktop. We'll make it cube.fbx. Fantastic. It's exported. Now let's make a new Unity project. Okay. As of this recording, I'm using Unity 2018, I believe, .2.14F1. I'm going to make a new project. We're just going to call it the COMP253 F2018 Lesson 9 project. I'm going to make it in 3D. I'm going to click Create Project, and I'm going to share this project with you on GitHub, where you can download it later if you really want to. All right, cool. So once Unity kicks off, it's going to create the things that it needs. Forget my messy desktop. Please ignore it. Please forgive me for my messiness. I do a lot of things throughout the time that I'm doing stuff. All right, cool. So I am loading everything in and stopping. It's just creating a sample scene in a second. And I know we're over time by several minutes, but bear with me. We're almost done. because this is part of what you need for your assignment number 2. Okay? In assignment number 2, what you're going to be doing is you're going to make a tile set, a custom tile set in 3D, right? Where you're going to take some 3D objects that can snap together to create an interactive scene. For example, I want to make a tunnel. I create pieces of my tunnel. The straight piece, the corner piece, the T in the tunnel, the dead end in the tunnel, maybe my right turn or my left turn, my up or my down. You can do all these different pieces in the tunnel, and then from there, put them together in Unity to create a level. Tile set is what we're making, a 3D tile set. All right, when Unity opens up, you're going to see something that looks like this. No, I'm not going to upgrade. What I want to do immediately is do a couple things. First of all, in Unity, like I told you, I want to rename my scenes to underscore scenes. That's just my way of doing things. Underscore means it's going to pop up first. I also want to make an underscore scripts folder. I'm not going to use it right now, but I'm going to make an underscore scripts folder. Those are the 2 folders I need. I'm also going to make a models folder. So I'm just going to make a new models folder. Here's my models, right? And my scene, my default scene is going to be called main, which I'm going to kick off. There's my main scene, okay? That's my Unity project. What I want to do is I want to drag and drop my Blender object inside of my scene if I can. Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. Okay, so I have a blend file. If you notice, I have a bunch of blend files on my my desktop. Here's my cube.blend. That's what I want. I could take the blend file. Unity actually takes Blender files, and you can directly drag and drop them into your Unity project like this. And what it does is, when it's done properly, it imports the Unity stuff, imports the blend object inside your Unity project. So here's my blend. Look what it has. It has ground, my cube, my default take, and it also has something called a cube avatar. This is the blend file. Yeah, one thing it's missing here is it's just a cube. And I don't have any texturing. I have nothing. You notice that? However, it's been cut. It's been cut up. So if I take my cube and put it into my scene, I have this cube.
Hello.
Hey, how you doing?
Oh.
It's okay. It's okay. Here's another thing I can do. Let's just get rid of this cube. So I'm going to delete it. And let's bring it in as an FBX model. Now remember, I can do it by dragging and dropping. I can also do it by going to assets, right? Import new asset. And I can point to where I want the asset to come from. So I'm going to go to desktop. And I want to bring this stuff in the FBX file. So I want to go into my cube FBX. That's the other one I imported. And I want to import that in. All right, so here's my cube. I want to put that into models. And now inside my cube, now I have a couple of other things. I have a ground. This is my ground plane. I have my lamp, my cube, my camera. I have a bunch of stuff in my cube. I can't delete stuff inside, right? Because my cube, notice here's my model. It has a bunch of stuff in here, right? That it doesn't take in with it. For example, if I drag and drop my cube into the scene, I also get my lights. I get my extra light, another camera. I get a bunch of other stuff. I can delete it from here because I can just delete this stuff. And yes, I want to break the instance. And I don't care about this lamp. And my cube has an inner cube inside of it. Notice it has a cube and a cube, right? Which I could drag out, actually. And then I can just get rid of this thing. So this is my actual cube. And it has a ground material, but I don't have a texture. Let's bring that texture back in. So inside my assets, I want to make in a new folder called textures. And my texture, I want to kind of drag and drop my texture in here. This is really cool. Here's my gravel cobble texture. So I'm going to double click in here, drag it in here, and it gets imported as a texture, right? So this is a default texture type. That's what it is. And my cube has this material, which is called ground, this ground material, right? If you look at my models, the ground material is right here, right? Here's my ground material. And I really can't do anything about it. I mean, I can copy it, but I can't really do anything with the cube, right? Because the cube itself is like one complete object. That's what it is, right? It's one complete object. Okay? So that's something that's a problem, right? So I need to get this ground material in here, but the ground material is a default material. Even my cube has a default material right now called ground, right? So here's what I want to do. What if I made a new material in Unity? So I'm going to create a new folder called materials. We're going to get into this more later on, guys. In my materials, I want to make a new material called ground. So create a new material called, we'll call this ground, the ground material, ground. And this time I have my texture. Here's my texture, my gravel cobble. And in my material, I want to pull it into the albedo space, this one right here. And then I'm going to take my gravel cobble material and apply it to my cube. Now you can see that my cube looks like it has a gravel cobble material, right? I can even make my gravel cobble material part of the normal map. So I can take the gravel cobble and put it in the normal map space. And what it's going to do is going to say, hey, wait, this gravel cobble material, it's not right. I can copy this material. So I want to duplicate this. So in edit, you can duplicate. Control D would also do it. And what I can do when I duplicate this is I can call it gravel cobble _ n for normal map. If I drag and drop this one into my material, which is my ground, right? So here's my normal map, and I want to grab this ground, this normal material, this normal map, and I want to drag this one in there. So there it is. That's what this one is. This is the normal map. And if I click Fix Now, it becomes a normal map, actually. And if I look closely at this material, so this cube is using this thing called gravel cobble, and my material, I don't know why I created both ground and gravel cobble. Okay, let's make it use ground. There we go. Now take a look. It has this really weird thing where it looks like there's a normal map in here. It looks like there's more geometry on this cube than there was because I made this normal map kind of work, right? So anything you bring in Blender will kind of look like this kind of workflow, right? So from Blender, you're going to bring in your model. The model is going to be either through FBX import or through the .blend file. When you make your scene, your interactive scene, which is going to happen 3 weeks from now, I want you to bring in your stuff, and it's got to all be textured like this. You're going to have textures on all of your objects. Okay, we're going to talk about this. Don't worry. But I want you to experiment. I want you to experiment with Blender by bringing stuff into your scene. I'm going to kind of save that one. And now what I want to do is I'm going to put this up on, I'm going to zip it up. And instead of putting it up on GitHub, actually, I'll just put it up on Slack for you guys. So again, I have this interactive scene in Unity. Guys, if we're coming in, I do apologize. Give me another minute, and I'll be right with you. I have this interactive, this kind of the scene that I have in Unity. It's inside of, it's on my desktop in my Unity projects. I call this COMP253 lesson 9. And I'm going to just zip it up for you guys. So I'm going to 7-zip it into a lesson that I can drag and drop onto Slack. And then you guys should have this now too. Okay, so take a look at that. Take a look at what I did. I want you guys to experiment with it. There's nothing wrong with trying to start the assignment that I'm going to be doing with you, but I want you to think about how to create this new tile set that you're going to make in 3D, right? In Blender right now, all we've done is made simple objects, right? Like this cube. How do I take this cube and apply it, in 3D? Here's another problem I want you to point out for a second. Take a look at this. If I scale this cube now after I've texture mapped it, so if I scale across the y-axis, look what happens. What's going on here? It skews, right? It's not good. You can't do this, right? This isn't good at all, right? To skew something like this. So this is where it becomes reasonable when you go into edit mode to add some more geometry. So if I go into subdivide and I subdivide this a bunch of times, and if I go back out, And now if I, you know, modify it, I mean, the great thing about this is I can unwrap this object again a bunch of times. And you can see that my whole cube has been unwrapped at every edge. If I scale it, you're still going to see the skewing, especially if I scale it across only the x-axis. So you can see the skewing across the x-axis. But it's only going to happen more at the edges and less in the middle than before. And let me show you what that looks like. Remember I talked about this idea of skewing? See how these ones are bigger than, this one is wider than this one? It creates a skewing effect where the picture is stretched. Okay, guys, we've way gone over time. Thank you so much for hanging out. And I'll see you guys next week. For homework, I recommend you try and apply a texture to your spaceship. Find some other textures like metal or like you know, stone or whatever else you want to use for your spaceship, and apply some textures to your spaceship. And I'll make a little Dropbox so that you can submit your spaceship with color and texture. Okay, for next week. Guys, thank you so much. I'll see you next week.